Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another video for EVE Echoes. Now today's video, as I'm sure you've already spotted, is a little bit different from usual. Now I'm going to say that all of this that you're seeing on screen here is not important. This is just a camera on me because it made it easier for me to talk and give my thoughts if I'm looking at something rather than just kind of reading and staring into the abyss. So if you want to treat this just as a podcast, then go for it. And speaking of podcasts, if you enjoy that kind of content, please do make sure to check out SheeV. He is an excellent content creator, making some really cool podcasts, currently sort of themed around EVE Echoes as well. I did a little podcast with him last Friday. I had a great time. The man is an absolute treasure to speak to, great laugh, and he's done some fantastic other interviews with other people in the community as well. It's a great way to get to know some of the members of the EVE Echoes community and see what they're all about. I've put a link in the description down below that will take you to his channel, not directly to the video of me, because I don't want that to appear like that's biasing my decision here. Go and check out his channel. Give him some love. It is well worth your time. But for today's video then, we're going to be talking about balance in regards to the small ships of EVE Echoes, frigates and destroyers. I'm not really going to be talking about cruisers or battleships and battle cruisers. That's not because I don't believe that there's a need for balance there. I have my beliefs in those situations. But I'm starting with the small ships because I don't want this video to be 3 hours long, and because I believe that small ships are what people kind of expect from me as content. My favourite ship is actually the Hurricane, which is a battle cruiser, but I am mainly a frigate and destroyer main. They're the ships I enjoy flying most, so they're what we're going to talk about. Again, this is a podcast. You can just ignore all the visual stuff on screen here, put it on in the background whilst you go do your cleaning, or just grind out some anomalies, or whatever the heck you fancy doing. You don't need the visuals. Anyway, if you do want to support this channel, if you do enjoy this video, hit like on it, sub to the channel, leave me a comment down below, ding the notification bell to never miss an update, and we do also have a Patreon page if you want to go the extra mile to supporting. If you support me on Patreon, you also get a little bit of input into what my life is like here in Zimbabwe, and you can start earning merchandise. And speaking of merchandise, there is a Redbubble merchandise store as well, where you can buy awesome things like the notebook that I'm going to be reading all of this from. This is where I have been making all of my notes for this particular video. This is the Silent Rose design. My wife designed this as a sort of an emblem for my flagship Silent Rose Hurricane. I absolutely love it. I couldn't resist. Anyway, enough shilling. Let's jump right into the video, shall we? Starting off then with faction ships. Now notice I say faction ships, not faction frigates. You guys know that I absolutely love my faction frigates. The reason that I have every single small weapon system trained up to at least Expert 4 in Operation and Upgrade is because I really enjoy the faction frigates. I think they are just so much fun to fly around, and considering that those aren't particularly heavy skills to train, I can afford to do that, whereas you're going to struggle to do that with faction battleships. I don't think anyone is even remotely close to being able to fly every single faction battleship in the game, because that would just be an insane skill point investment. Now, to me, the trouble with faction ships is that you can access them early on, and they are outclassed fairly quickly. Some of them more than others. I mean, obviously we know my opinions on the Dramiel, that this is just a ship that is massively outclassed by the time you hit Tech 8. If you've got a choice between the Dramiel and the Slasher Interceptor, go for the Slasher Interceptor. As much as that pains me to say, it's pretty much true. The Slasher 2 Interceptor, even more so. And the other Interceptors do kind of really outclassify the rest of those ships as well. You might argue that, you know, there's no way the H1 Interceptor could beat a Daredevil, and probably not, but considering the cost difference, really, and the fact the H1 Interceptor has a lot of other perks to it, like its invulnerability to warp disruption spheres and things like that, it's a very hard decision to say to someone, look, yeah, you should probably go for a Daredevil instead of an H1-2 Interceptor. Honestly, you can usually do everything that a Daredevil does with an H1 Interceptor, and I know I'm kind of being a little bit hyperbolic here, but the point is that if they're close, it's not close enough. That the Interceptors do massively outweigh the faction frigates. Now, you can argue the counterpoint on this is that yes, you can access a faction frigate at any level. I got my Dramiel at tier 6, I think it was, tier 6 or tier 7, I was starting to fly a Dramiel, whereas obviously I had to hit tech level 10 before I could start flying a Slasher 2 Interceptor. So the fact that the Slasher 2 Interceptor is better is kind of your reward for sticking with the game for an entire year's worth of skill point grind. I get that, and I see where you're coming from. I just still disagree with the concept that any ship should just outclass the previous ones. I think that we've talked about this at length before, that things like the Tornado, Tornado 2 and Tornado 3, I disagree with that as a concept. I think there should be a Tornado 1 and a Tornado 2 at most, because then you've got the expensive one and you've got the cheap one that's not as good. That's not the same with the Slasher 2 Interceptor and a Dramiel. They're both expensive, just one of them is still flat out better than the other. Anyway, how would I propose to fix this? Well, to me, the easiest way to fix this is to buff those ships, to literally just make them better. Increase the amount of damage that a Dramiel does. I think a Dramiel could really go with extra firepower speed. I want to see those autocannons cycling like an absolute Gatling gun. That to me is what the Dramiel is all about. It's hitting someone with autocannons, or indeed straight cannons, really, really quickly. So I think that changing their stats rather than 5% faster speed, faster activation time, give it 7.5% activation time per level. That is a big buff, I know, and we are going to talk about how we stop this becoming a ridiculous thing in just a moment. Now, the same is going to be true for the faction cruisers. I don't think there's as much of a difference between a Tech 10 cruiser and a faction cruiser. I think some of the faction cruisers are still the clear winners in those matchups. But again, some of them are a little bit too close. I'm looking at the Cinnable and the Stabber 2, for example. Again, giving slight buffs to the Cinnable and all of the other faction cruisers would make them that little bit more desirable. When it comes to the faction battleships, these, I think, are actually in a pretty good place right now. I think that the faction battleships are categorically better than their equivalents, and if you're looking at things like the Bargorn, oh boy, that is one of the most terrifying ships in New Eden right now, and I don't think that is going to change anytime soon. But because of the changes I'm going to be proposing to faction ships, we would still give that a little buff. Like, I'm literally talking about going from 5% to 5.5% per level, that kind of thing, or 1% to 1.5%. Very minor buffs to their actual output. I'm not talking about just like EHP, speed and things like that. I am talking about damage potential here. I'm talking about their actual combat potential. Now, the way that we counter this, because I've already seen horror stories of people who have started the game, dumped a whole load of money into Plex to turn it into ISK, have bought themselves a Daredevil, or in one case even a Vindicator, early on in the game, undocked it, lost it really quickly, and gone, oh my goodness, I quit. Now, on one hand, you can sit there and laugh and say, ha ha, poor whale. And yeah, I kind of get where you're coming from. I think it's great that you can't just pour money into EVE Echoes and win. Whatever winning is in EVE. But there is that worry that if you make the faction ships just categorically better than everything else, people are just going to dump money into them and then win at EVE Echoes. The way to counter this, in my opinion, is to move their skills. Right now, the Dramiel requires Advanced Frigate Command, and Advanced Small Cannon Operation. I would propose we change that to Expert Frigate Command and Expert Small Cannon Operation. Why? Because suddenly, instead of getting those bonuses at advanced level, which is where all of the other basic Tech 10 ships are getting them as well, look at the Slasher 2 Interceptor, it's all advanced level skills, suddenly you're having to put a lot more skill points in there to get those effects. And people say, oh yeah, but you know, people are going to go up to those skills anyway. Yes, but now they have to. I did a video once, back when I was still in Golden Horde, where I borrowed a succubus of someone, and I was only, at that point, laser 4-4 on operation, which meant I was missing 20% of the upgrades that the succubus could benefit from. It was only getting 80% of its skill bonuses in regards to advanced small laser, and that made a huge difference. Now, if you look at my skill tree, and if you look at most people's skill tree, I would almost guarantee that the vast majority of people get a skill up to Expert 4, and then they stop. Because Expert 5 usually requires massive amounts of skill training, usually in excess of the entire rest of the skill. Like, you've got everything up to Expert 4, and then you've got Expert 5. Yet it gives a very small increase, so people don't bother training these. If you made it so that the ship gets their bonuses from these, people have to train into those skills, or suddenly if you stop at Expert 4 Small Cannon Operation, you're only getting 80% of the possible skill bonus from your Dramiel, and I've got a fly in here that's going a little bit crazy, I do apologise for that. Anyway, so this would force players into min-maxing. People aren't just going to dump Plex, dump real money into the game to get Plex to buy one of these ships, because it's going to take them ages to actually skill into it. It rewards people who skill into that high level on a particular ship. It gives you that min-max there, that if you are willing to go all the way up to Expert 5 on a skill, then you are dedicating yourself to that. You're not just spreading your resources and going, right, I've got advanced small laser operation, I've got advanced small cannon operation, I've got advanced small missile operation, and I've got advanced small railgun operation, all to 5. Now all of the interceptors are flyable. No, if you want to go for the faction frigates, you're going to have to go up to Expert 5 on every single one of those. If you want to be flying a Bargorn, which right now is just flat out better than every other battleship out there. If you want to fly a Rattlesnake, which is flat out better than any other drone battleship out there, you can stop at Advanced 5. Which is the same as you would stop on any other battleship. Now, if you want that Rattlesnake to be as good as it ought to be, you're going to have to train large drones all the way up to Expert 5, and that is a significant skill point investment. It is a way of internally balancing those ships by bringing down their potential damage, by forcing people to min-max into them. They becomes a dedicated thing. You have to dedicate yourself to actually flying that ship. And if you buff it to that point, and you entice people to do that, to me that's a really healthy way of giving people an actual specialisation. It's the same way that if you're playing, this shows my age, back when I used to play World of Warcraft in Burning Crusade and Wrath of the Lich King, there was no way to hit the final tier on a tree unless you dedicated yourself pretty much to that entire talent tree, which was the point. If you wanted that really powerful final tier, top tier ability, you had to dedicate yourself to that one talent tree. In EVE Echo's terms, that would be dedicating yourself to small cannons rather than small lasers. There's a reason I don't have small cannon operation Expert 5. I stopped at 4, because there's not much need for it. This would force me to do that and actually have to pick which route I want to go, and I think that's healthy. Anyway, moving on to the second point then. We've talked about how interceptors kind of outclassify a lot of the faction frigates, so let's talk about interceptors. Oh boy, interceptors are a topic that I am so done with that I spent 3.5 billion ISK buying an Astero just so I didn't have to fly an interceptor anymore. And I'm now terrified of using that Astero because it can't be insured yet. Yeah, that's how much I am done with interceptors. So, the question I've asked myself, and I've put in big bold writing here, is why do they do so much? At this point in time, if you are going into faction war games, the interceptors are as good as anything else there. You can make the argument that interceptors aren't as good as the assault frigates. I would say try the long-range interceptors. You will blap those assault frigates before they get anywhere near you. I played the Slasher 2 interceptor with strike cannons, Slasher interceptor with strike cannons, nothing gets near me. Condor interceptor with missiles, nothing gets near you. That, to me, just is an incredibly powerful ship, and that's fine. I'm okay with that, sort of. So they're arguably the best ships in faction war games. If you want to go PvEing, like ratting in a frigate, then the interceptors are the best for that. If you want to go PvP roaming, then the interceptors are best at that. And currently, because the explorers only have 2 mid-slots, if you want to go scanning, the interceptors are your best option as a frigate for that, because they've got the DPS to bully people, they've got the 3 mid-slots required to actually fit all of the modules you need. You need the wide resonance scanner, you need the relic analyzer, and you need the data analyzer. That's 3 mid-slots. The explorer frigates only have 2, that doesn't work. The interceptors, however, have 3. The interceptors also have that bubble immunity. They are small, they're hard to hit. And you might say, yeah, but the assault frigates are tankier. Yeah, the faction frigates are tankier. Who cares if they're tankier? If you're not getting hit, then it doesn't matter how much damage you can take. The point is you're not taking any. Like, literally, if you are a glass cannon, you had 1 hit point and nothing can hit you, it doesn't matter. You can have all the HP in the world, but if people can still hit you, you're going to die faster than the one that they just cannot hit. So, this then also leads into the fact that right now destroyers are terrible, and interceptors are the better option there for taking out other frigates. They are just literally the frigate of choice for every pilot ever. Like, literally, if you are flying frigates, if you're tech level 8 or higher, you're in an interceptor. It's that simple right now, that if you are tech level 8 or higher, and you're a frigate pilot, you are flying an interceptor. They are absolutely everywhere, because there is no real alternative. Now, what do I mean about there's no real alternative? Well, what else is there? If you want to go exploring, you've got the Explorer frigate at tier 10, which doesn't have enough mid-slots to do the job properly, or you've got the Stealth Bomber 3, which we'll talk about later on as well, which really also is not a good option. So, you've got that interceptor at tech 10, or you can come down to tech 9 and fly an interceptor, stealth bomber. You're going to be flying an interceptor because the stealth bombers at tech level 9 again are not great. Then you hit Tech 8, and there's the Interceptors. That's when you start flying Interceptors. Tech level 7, you might try the Assault Frigate, but the second you hit those Interceptors, you know you're not going back to that Assault Frigate on the live server, because they just die to everything. They're tankier than the Frigates, but they get hit so much easier that they just die. I wish they were good on live server. Trust me, I wish that the Assault Frigates were an actual valid option once you hit Tech level 8. They're not. Once you hit Tech level 8, as a Frigate pilot, you are now an Interceptor pilot. Now, the thing is that Interceptors are supposed to be tackle. They're supposed to be small, they're supposed to be fast, they're supposed to be hard to hit. Their roll bonus and all of their abilities are designed to basically whip them into the enemy, to tackle that enemy and hold it in place whilst bigger guns arrive. There are two issues with that right now, and one issue with that. Bigger guns aren't necessary. The Interceptor can hit you, and it already is the big guns. It's already doing more damage than any other frigate. The only reason that you would bring anything other than an Interceptor in this kind of PvP situation is because you're bringing the big guns as like a cruiser or a battle cruiser or a battleship, and you're therefore just tackling, but you're still doing the damage. If you are a solo frigate pilot, you're still going to be using the Interceptor and the Interceptor on its own. Now, what annoys me about this is that the Interdictors, both the cruisers and the destroyers, got heavy nerfs in the May balance patch. They lost all of their damage potential. Why? Because they were doing too much. They were too much of a threat on their own. Their role is an interdictor. They are designed to interdict, to hold someone in place with a interdiction sphere bubble or a warp disruption sphere, or whichever way they're going to do it. They're not designed to hold it and to kill it. They're designed to hold it while the rest of the fleet kills it. And they got their DPS nerfed. So why haven't the Interceptors? Interceptors are supposed to be super fast tackle frigates. Right now they're super fast tackle frigates that are also your heavy damage dealers, and they are your best PvE ship and your PvP ship and your explorer, and it's too much. Why did the Interdictors get nerfs but the Interceptors got buffs that pushed them further outside their roll bonus? And the next argument is, well, if you nerf the Interceptors, what else am I going to fly? That's why they haven't been nerfed. Hi, I'd like to talk to you as the guy who had trained small cannons and full destroyer skills in order to fly a Thrasher Covert Ops at Tech level 10. That got removed, and what other small cannon destroyer is there at Tech level 10? It's an Interdictor that is not a combat ship. Then you've got all the way down to Tech level 5 before you finally hit a combat turret destroyer. So the fact that there's no other option is not a good enough reason for not nerfing it. It's a very good reason for adding other alternatives. Absolutely, at Tech level 10, we need a Rifter Assault, the Tristan Assault, the Kestrel Assault, and the Tormentor Assault. We need those ships up at Tech level 10 there. We might be beneficial in having something like a Breacher Assault 2, the Assault 2s, the Assault ships that were there at Tech level 7 going up to Tech level 10 with additional bonuses as well. That would be good. It would be awesome to have the Logistics Frigates at Tech level 10, the E-War Frigates at Tech level 10. There is so much that could be added at Tech level 10, but no, we're getting Dreadnoughts instead, and Carriers. Ships that I'm not going to get into here, I just don't see the purpose in them. Dreadnoughts are designed for taking out citadels, but in EVE Echoes, you have a cap of the amount of damage you can do per hit to a citadel. Battleships are already hitting that, so why do we need capital ships? Capital ships are just... all they're going to do is increase that cap, and then the capital ships become better, but then capital ships are then strictly for killing citadels. Or rather, the carriers are strictly there for killing fleets, and the dreadnoughts are strictly there for killing carriers. So if you have a fleet of carriers and dreadnoughts, that's all you need by the design philosophy they're going for. But hey, we're not going to go into that one in this video, I say. The point that I'm getting at here is that there need to be more small ships available at Tech level 10. We need a lot more frigates being added. We need turret destroyers at Tech level 10, but I'm jumping ahead of myself there. And the Interceptors need significant nerfs. Those Interceptors should have the same treatment that the Interdictors had. Get rid of their high slots, take them down to 2 high slots, and possibly even nerf the skill bonuses as well. The 2 high slots might be enough, because that is a 33% reduction to their DPS. If you're doing 300 DPS with 3 high slots and you go down to 2 high slots, you're only going to be doing 200 DPS, and that suddenly seems a bit more reasonable for what a frigate, what an Interceptor should be doing. To counter this, however, I would propose buffing the warp speed and the align time of Interceptors. Oh, but hang on, Benzie, aren't Interceptors really hard to catch already? Yes, That's the point in Interceptors. They are meant to be hard to catch. They are not meant to be damage dealers. So making it even harder to catch, I'm all for. If people want to use an Atron Interceptor to jump through gate camps and deliver small amounts of cargo from A to B, go for it. That's awesome. If people want to be able to jump in and out of bubbles and tackle people at ridiculous rates, that's cool. That's what an Interceptor pilot is supposed to do. My problem starts when we start saying that Interceptors do more damage than everything else as well. And why is this a problem? Because with the current situation, even if you add all those other frigates, all those assault frigates and things like that, there's going to be no point flying them if the Interceptors have that bubble immunity, have that speed, have the impossibility to hit, and still have that damage. You have to take that away to actually give people a reason to fly any of this other stuff. That warp safety is amazing. And some people have said, well, you'd get less people flying Interceptors if they didn't have that safety. Yes, but they also need that for their role. In a fleet engagement, the point is an Interceptor is supposed to be able to fly into a warp bubble, tackle something that's trying to run away from that bubble, and then be able to fly away once the cavalry arrives. Just right now, the cavalry doesn't have to arrive, and that is the problem. Anyway, I'm going on about Interceptors way too much here. Please nerf the damage, buff the warp speed and the align time. And EVE Online, by the way, frigates have Interceptors have a warp speed of up to 9 AU, which is very quick. No other ship in the game has that. The Drumiel back in the open beta had 15 AU, but obviously it got pulled down to 5 with a 50% increase, giving it 7.5. That would make Interceptors warp faster than the Drumiel, which I'm fine with, by the way. That is kind of the point of Interceptors. I just wish that they would refocus Interceptors to the actual design intent that they are clearly supposed to have, rather than just everything. Now, I've talked about destroyers a lot in there, so it kind of makes sense to go on to that point next. And yes, I mentioned that I was really looking forward to, personally, the Tech 10 Covert Ops Thrasher, and I know a lot of people were looking forward to the Covert Ops Coercers, Catalysts, and Cormorants. They were really cool ships. I had great fun on Fulmination flying that thing. What hurt me there isn't that they nerfed the Interdictors. I don't think the Interdictors deserved that nerf, and I know I've just said that the Interceptors need nerfs because they do too much out of their role. I don't think that Interdictors were doing too much outside of their role. The destroyers, the cruisers absolutely were. You could park a Celestis Interdictor on a gate with a bubble and it could solo anything, pretty much, that came through. Whereas a Thrasher Interdictor sitting on that gate, something comes through that is bigger than a destroyer, it's going to have a hard time, like, handling it. So I don't get why they nerfed that. It doesn't become a scary gate camp. If it's anything smaller than a cruiser, it's either a destroyer or an interceptor. The interceptor's going to fly through anyway and thus not be a threat, and the destroyer is going to be pretty much on equal footing to the Thrasher Interdictor. So I don't get why they got those nerfs. But either way, the fact that they got those nerfs, followed by the addition of a third-tier destroyer, the third-tier Interdictor, I don't get why we needed 3 Interdictors. Or the only difference between a Tech 1, a Tech 2, and a Tech 3 Interdictor is the amount of time that the bubble lasts in space. Who is doing a gate camp for so long that they don't have enough fuel in their cargo hold to keep the bubble going that long? Like, seriously, there is no need to upgrade from an Interdictor 1 to 2 to 3. You can do everything you need to with the Interdictor 1. The Interdictor 2s cost more, and you can sit there and go, oh cool, it's a kind of blingy ship, but I don't get why you would spend as much as you have to spend on an Interdictor 3 when the Interdictor 2 and 1 do the same job better. But again, the point isn't necessarily even that. The point is that when they took away the Thrasher Covert Ops, the Covert Ops destroyers, they took away the only combat destroyers, the only combat turret destroyers, after Tech Level 5. Go to a tech tree right now, go to a ship tree right now. Doesn't matter which one, you'll notice that at Tech Level 3 you get the Coercer or the Thrasher, the first turret destroyer. At Tech Level 4 you then get the Tech 2 variant, like the Thrasher 2, the Coercer 2, the Catalyst 2, the Cormorant 2, and then at Tech Level 5 you get the Fleet or Navy issue and the Guardian. That Fleet or Navy issue is the last one of those destroyers that is actually designed for combat. After that, all the way from Tech Level 5 up to Tech Level 10, there are no combat turret destroyers, and that to me is a problem. I trained into small cannons because I wanted to be a small cannon pilot. At Tech Level 10 right now, that is Interceptors. We've already gone on a rant of why that is a problem in and of itself, but why are there no destroyers with turrets at Tech Level 10? Or just, heck, anywhere between tech level 10 and tech level 5. Oh, but there are the interdictors. Yes, but the interdictors aren't going to be able to do anything remotely worthy of damage. It means that if you are a destroyer pilot right now, you're either flying missiles and drones and going, or both, probably, because in fairness, if you're flying the Algos or the Dragoon, you're probably using missiles for the top slot. You're either flying missile destroyers or drone destroyers, or you are just skilled into them for the interdiction, at which point you don't even need the destroyer skills, you just get the minimums. You don't even need the skills that are on the ship itself. Just go out there with a standard bubble, it will do the job. Making a bubble bigger doesn't really do anything, making it last longer doesn't do anything. But for this privilege, we lost the actual good ships that we had at tech level 10 as destroyer pilots. And that just makes me so sad. In addition to that, if Faction Wargames has taught me anything, well, it's taught me two things about destroyers. One, there is no need to ever put a Higgs anchor on them. I get why, it was internal balancing to make them slower, noticeably slower than the other ships, to make it so that they really have to warp and they become almost turrets. They're a thing that plants itself there and then deals with whatever's around it. So that taught me that you don't need a Higgs anchor for them to be worse than everything else. You just need to make them Tech 4 when everything else is Tech 6 upwards. And on the other side of things, it showed me that destroyers just don't do enough. They really, really don't. I think the Dragoon is a dark horse in Faction Wargames, and I've had a lot of successful runs as the Dragoon. I just think that if you're going for any of the other destroyers, you really are doing it wrong, and I don't like saying that in a game like EVE, but you really are doing it wrong if you try to fly a destroyer in Faction Wargames, because why would you? The assault frigates have more tank and more DPS, and they're more manoeuvrable. That's not just a tech level issue, that's also the fact that the destroyers only have 3 or 4 high slots, which is just not enough. I used to think that one of the best ways to fix destroyers was to give all of them from tech level 5 upwards that additional high slots. The Thrasher would have 3 high slots, the Thrasher 2 would have 4 high slots, the Thrasher fleet issue would then have 5 high slots, and then once we hit tech level 10, we have one that has 6 high slots. I'm not even sure that's enough right now. I genuinely believe that tech level 10 destroyers should have 6 or 7 high slots. Absolutely. I even think the Talwar 2 Assault, which can do some terrifying DPS with torpedoes, should be able to do more. Basically, my concept with destroyers is that they should be on par with cruisers for the damage they put out. The weakness of a destroyer is that it's pretty much as slow as a cruiser. It has none of the cruiser's tanking capabilities, because it can't fit medium modules, it can only fit small modules. That's the point. You have the damage output of a cruiser, but none of its tanking capabilities. Now, this would give destroyers a place actually in the game, because suddenly they are cheaper than cruisers, doing the same amount of damage as cruisers, but they don't have the tank. That's the balance. The other side of this is that in EVE Online, at least, the purpose of destroyers is that they are getting cruiser DPS, but with small weaponry. The idea there being that they can actually hit the frigates, which the cruisers can't. In EVE Online, if you're flying a stabber, for example, you are going to have a tough time if an interceptor tries to hit you, because webs are shorter range, and your turrets don't have hardly the same amount of tracking. Now, interestingly enough, if you remember going all the way back to the open beta test back in December 2019, January 2020, cruisers were a lot worse than they are now. At that point in time, medium turrets really did struggle to hit anything smaller, anything frigate-sized or smaller. If you upgraded to a stabber and jumped into the same encounters you'd been running with the Thrasher, you were tanky, you weren't dying, but you would really struggle to hit anything unless you were able to catch it in 1 or 2 webs. And you really, really needed to do that. And even, with a single web on something, you were only barely hitting it for any damage at all. Double webs was needed to get any actual noticeable damage. Nowadays, double webs is a death sentence for a frigate. If they get 2 webs on you, you're gone. You are gone. This was complained about at the time. People didn't like that their upgraded cruisers suddenly weren't hitting frigates. And after the open beta test closed, medium weapons got buffs to their tracking. Their damage didn't change, they just got massive buffs to their tracking, like literally massive buffs. We're talking about doubling their tracking. In between the open beta and the final test, several of the frigates and most of the frigates and destroyers also got fairly significant nerfs. What you then may not remember is that between the final test and launch, the cruisers and battle cruisers got more buffs to their medium turrets and weapons application, and the frigates and destroyers got hit with the nerf bat yet again. This means that destroyers and frigates have been pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, and the focus has been increasingly applied onto the cruisers. The fact that medium weapons can hit and apply their damage to small, fast-moving targets as well as they do is frankly a balancing crime. It is single-handedly pushing destroyers out of an entire purpose of being. Why would you be a destroyer pilot to deal with frigates when you could be a cruiser pilot, do more DPS, have better tank, and still be able to deal with those frigates? Please, put your answer in the comment section down below as why you would actually want to do that. The issue is that I can sit there and say that destroyers are excellent for new players because they don't require hard skills to train into, and they will take you all the way up to tech level 7, no worries. They will do really well all the way to tech level 7. And if you're going with the missiles or the drone destroyers, they'll actually do really well at tech level 10 as well. Not quite as good as I think they should be doing, but they will do well. The trouble is that once you hit tech level 5, stop training destroyers, put everything into cruisers, you will do better. Flat out, you will do better, for the simple fact that those cruisers are doing everything the destroyers do, and more. And that's the problem. So we kind of need to nerf medium weapon tracking a little bit, although increase its damage I would be fine with. I'd be fine with increasing turret damage at the cost of dropping their tracking down a little bit. But I do think that destroyers need to have more high slots and more power grid, in addition to there being more destroyers. Certainly at tech level 10, we need turret destroyers. Give me a Thrasher 2 fleet issue, and maybe or a Thrasher Assault. If you don't want covert ops destroyers to be a thing, that's fine. Netties have a reason for getting rid of the covert ops destroyers, but give us something back, whether it's a Thrasher 3 or a Thrasher 2 fleet issue, whatever. I just want it. That brings us nicely to the last little thing that we need to talk about here, which I've already mentioned, the Explorers needing 3 mid-slots. We talked about that earlier. It's the stealth bombers and their application. Now, the Tech 6 stealth bombers are pretty fun. The fact that you've got a frigate running around with medium torpedoes on it is hilarious, and it does surprisingly well. If Faction Wargames has taught us anything, it's that stealth bombers actually are surprisingly scary in the right hands. The issue arises once we hit the Tech level 9 and Tech level 10, Tech 2 and Tech 3 stealth bombers. Now again, first of all, premise, I disagree with the concept of a Tech 2 and a Tech 3. I don't like the fact that any ship would outweigh the previous one. And okay, that didn't really happen with the Tech 2s, because the Tech 1s were using medium torpedoes, whereas the Tech 2s were using large torpedoes, which meant they had different prey. Large torpedoes do not apply well to anything smaller than a citadel, or to like a battleship. The Tech 1s worked well on cruisers and battle cruisers and anything that sort of size, so like mining barges and things, they did pretty well with. The issue is that once you hit those Tech level 9s and Tech level 10s, I would argue what the very purpose of their existence even is anymore. Those large torpedoes are so absolutely terrible in their application that you are only going to be going up against battleships or against citadels. At which point, why are you not flying a battleship anyway? Because if you're going to be training large missiles in order to get the bonuses, why not also just train basic, like, battleship operation, battleship command? At which point, suddenly, you're able to fly Ravens and Typhoons and these really exciting ships that will also turn up to a call of arms and, you know, take out other battleships quite comfortably, and they'll take out citadels quite comfortably. I just don't see why you would ever go for a Tech 2 or a Tech 3 stealth bomber, because that application is so terrible. The only reason I can see to ever fly one of these is if you were to affect their application in a positive way by reducing the explosion radius or increasing the explosion velocity, preferably both. Because you are a teeny tiny little frigate, and any stray shot that hits you is going to kill you, because these ships have no tank whatsoever. The thing is, though, if you're going up to take out an enemy citadel, that whole hit-and-run mechanic of I'm going to stealthily cloak up to it, drop my cloak, and then bombard you with large torpedoes, doesn't work against a citadel. You're not going to kill it before the defenders turn up, at which point you are dead. Whereas if you're bringing a whole fleet, then you can just bring battleships. Why would you bring stealth bombers to that fight? At which point, why do you need stealth bombers at all? And you could argue that, oh, I use stealth bomber 2s to go hunting some of the bigger targets out there. I'm, you know, the guy who sneaks up on a Macariel doing a mission. And it's like, yeah, and that Macariel's just going to run away. Or it's going to wait for its friends to turn up. And I don't get why stealth bombers are the way they are. They need a increase to their application so those torpedoes can actually do some of the damage. It's awesome. Fitting. I sat there on fulmination because I was never going to pay actual ISK for one, with a Hound 3. And I put the the large torpedoes on it, 4 sets of large torpedoes with full large missile skills. The DPS is terrifying and it looks awesome, but then you undock it and you try to hit anything with it and you're just doing zeros on anything smaller than the largest battle cruisers or smallest battleships. It's great having all of that DPS, but not if you can't do a darn thing with it. Anyway, that brings me nicely to the end of my notes. We have covered everything that I've written down in there about what I think should happen with small ships, with the destroyers and with the frigates. Now, of course, these are my opinions. You may have your own opinions on this. They may differ quite considerably to mine, and that's cool. I would be interested in hearing what you guys have to say, what thoughts you have in regards to those 4 topics, between destroyers, between interceptors being too good, between stealth bombers, and with the faction frigates. My personal favourite one of those that I really, really, really hope someone on the dev team listens to is the faction frigate one. That, to me, solves a lot of problems in the game, but 100% to me, interceptors need nerfs, and I don't understand why people are so adamant to keep interceptors the way they are. I get it, up to the point that they add new frigates. If we have a choice between a Rifter Assault and a Slasher 2 Interceptor, that is an actual meaningful decision. Right now there is no meaningful decision, it's just go for whichever Interceptor happens to fit whichever weapon you have trained into up until that point. Anyway, folks, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below. Otherwise, thank you for watching this one right the way to the end. I know it's been a bit of a long, rambly one. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.